So it's just interesting and important to understand this, especially if you're in a relationship, because what a level 5 argument might be like somebody's level 1, or it could be somebody's level 10.
You have to understand that everything is relative. And you have to be hyper-conscious and aware of that so that you can coexist with other people.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was number 1049 today. For episode number 1050, happy Monday, recognizing a huge lesson from your past. So believe it or not, Alan has never met my mom and my grandmother. Is that true? You've never met my mom and my grandmother?
That is true.
That is a fact.
I mean, I've met them virtually, but never in person.
Well, that doesn't even count.
Exactly.
So you've never met them.
Correct.
When I was younger, Alan, and you'll appreciate this very much, when I was younger, my friends loved coming over to my house because my mother, myself, and my grandmother would openly swear at one another. Pretty commonly. It was pretty common. We were joking. It wasn't anything serious. We weren't yelling at each other. It was just like, you were okay to swear in my house. For whatever reason.
Same.
I don't know why, but I loved it. I took full advantage of that when I could. And I definitely took full advantage when friends would come over, because it was kind of like, hey, watch this. Watch what I can do. But
right. When you were a little kid, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The reason that a lot of my friends thought it was cool and they would laugh about it is because that is not what they had at home. That was not their experience at home. So today's episode is about the Richter scale of what's normal for you. So a Richter scale is when you have an earthquake, that's how they measure whatever the size of it, I guess, is the Richter scale. I didn't come up with it. Some guy named...
Scientist Jeff.
Some guy named something Richter created it, and they were like, we're going to name this after him. But that's the thing is, my friends would come over, and they'd be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is your normal. You get to swear at your mom? And I'd say, yeah, it's not anything serious. We're not mad at each other. I can't do it if I'm mad at her. But I'd always have to recognize that when I went to somebody else's house. I always had to recognize that. And I remember I had a friend. Oh my goodness, this was so awkward. I had a friend who would come to my house, and he knew he could say whatever, so he would kind of swear around my family. But then me, him, and somebody else went to one of our other buddies' houses, and he was like swearing with my buddy's parents there. And we were like, yo, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, watch your mouth. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
These are upstanding church-going citizens. Like, you got to take it easy. But his Richter scale, he wasn't prepared for that. He was used to coming to my house and saying whatever he wanted. Now, obviously, the story I'm telling is funny, and it's not super serious, but your Richter scale is kind of your experience. So if you grew up without money and you get a job that pays you pretty decently, compared to your normal, compared to what you were raised in, compared to your expectations, you might say, oh, I'm making so much money. But if somebody, say you grew up in a family that had millions and millions of dollars, if you're making $100,000 a year, that might not seem like that much because your Richter scale is off. If in your relationships you have always been respected and loved and taken care of and supported, your Richter scale, your expectations, your feelings towards things are going to be different than somebody who was never respected, was walked on, was treated badly, was sworn at. So it's just interesting and important to understand this, especially if you're in a relationship, because what a level 5 argument might be like somebody's level 1, or it could be somebody's level 10. If I grew up in a household where there was a lot of arguing, and I didn't, I'm grateful for that. If, say, I grew up in a household that was like 9 out of 10, like very, 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 very bad, violence, all that stuff. I didn't. But if I did, and I met somebody who had the opposite experience, and they had a wonderful childhood, their level 5 of like, hey, I'm pretty scared right now, for me would be a level 1. Be like, this is totally fine. Nobody is hurting anybody. We're not swearing. Like, our voices are raised a little bit. So it's just very important to understand that your Richter scale is most likely completely different than all of the people around you. And that's very, very important. And last thing I'll add on this. I had a friend one time, Alan, who said to me, he said, Kev, one of my favorite things about you, and I really appreciated this, he said, one of my favorite things about you is you've been through a lot of crap in your life, but you've always been a really good man. And I said, I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that so much. And he said, sometimes I feel guilty because I haven't been through what you've been through. And that was quite literally him saying our Richter scales are very, very, very different. I recognize it, but that was what he was saying is our Richter scales are completely different. Very interesting.
Well, I've said this many times, and one of my favorite things too is, and I told the team this recently, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but you and I are business partners, and I've said this to you and to the team, and now I'll say it here. There's no way that my favorite part of you is that you've come from nothing.
I appreciate that.
And
what's your second favorite part of me? And then third through fifth.
The second one is definitely how funny you are.
I appreciate
definitely.
That. I'm just kidding. I just
no, but
almost
seriously,
knocked my camera off the desk.
you're hardworking.
I appreciate it.
That's my favorite part.
You don't have to answer anymore. I was genuinely just trying to make it funny.
I know you were joking. It's awesome. It's awesome. So the reason, what I want to say here is this. I would never have been able to be a business partner with someone who was spoiled growing up. And I'm not trying to say that your mom and memes didn't do an awesome job. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you and I did not grow up in wealth.
Yeah.
And we had to really work for and earn everything, quite frankly. And my stepfather left, and this is an interesting story, and I know that some of the listeners have heard this before, but you want to talk about Richter scales. When my father passed away when I was 2 years old, I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14. And my stepfather earned a lot of money. So when my birth father passed away, my mom had 2 kids, and she didn't have a lot of choices, or at least she didn't feel like she had a lot of choices. So she didn't make a lot of money, and she didn't know what to do because she was a stay-at-home mom, and my father was in sales, and he did very, very well. And so my stepdad and my mom got together, and fortunately my stepfather made a lot of money. He earned a good income. And so from 3 to 14, not to mention this was in the 90s, because I was born in 88, so from 3 to 14, that's the whole 90s right there. And the 90s, and you can look this up, in America, the 90s were the greatest economic expansion literally in the last couple hundred years, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's one of the highest expansions in history, honestly. The dot-com bubble, everyone's heard of the dot-com bubble. Okay, that's the 90s. The late 80s and the 90s were wild in terms of economic growth. And so not only was my stepfather doing well, but everyone was kind of doing well in a way. Not everyone, but a lot of people, I should say, especially in tech. And so I went from getting remember the Dreamcast? So Kevin and I were friends in middle school, and he came over and we played a game called Dynamite Cop. Best game ever, man. This game was sweet. And Dreamcast was right before mass multiplayer online games. And so Dreamcast had like dial-up internet. Sega really screwed that up because Ethernet was right after that. But anyways, so Kevin and I played Dreamcast, and that was my early Christmas present. I used to get all the consoles, and we used to go on skiing trips, and we had a custom yacht we were building, and my mom, my stepdad, my sister, and I, we used to go on trips all the time. You know, that's why I'm such a good snowboarder, is because I was on mountains since I was 4 years old. We went to all the mountains in New England. I mean, literally all of them. And when my stepfather left, we got the home, my stepfather got the yacht, and so that we wouldn't have to change schools, my sister and I. And we went from very well off to, in the early 2000s, there was 2002, there was an economic, the 2000s are kind of like the lost decade economically because of 2002 and 2008. And we won't go down that rabbit hole, but essentially not only did my stepfather leave, which was the primary source of income, but now we had to figure out how to survive because we had this home, but we didn't have a huge income. And so I went from getting an Xbox and a Dreamcast and trips and boats and oceans and all this stuff, Block Island and, 90s and expansion and right, to literally free lunch at school. We got free lunch at school because our income was so low, fortunately. And so you want to talk about a Richter scale. That was really devastating for me because I was so used to certain wealth things that were no longer happening. Not only because my stepdad left, but also because of the recession. And so, I'm grateful for that in hindsight. It was one of the most painful experiences at the time because not only did I lose a part of my core family, and then my mom had a hard time with that, and I was the man of the house at 14, but...
Hey guys, it's Ramos, and I am happy that I was in group coaching for a second time. It definitely helps to have accountability and all of that good stuff. I feel like I am constantly going up and down and everything, but it's always good to have someone message on WhatsApp and then a reminder, hey, get back on it. So it was good. I definitely got a lot of good information that I'm going to continue learning because I am a little backed up, but I'm happy that I invested it in this because it was investing in me. And even better, I get to meet people that are doing the same exact thing to help themselves. And I need friends and close people around me like that, So yeah, I really appreciated being in group coaching because of the accountability and because of meeting people.
Going from very well off financially, upper middle class, to poverty was not easy. And fortunately, my mom bootstrapped, and I worked really, really hard in school to get scholarships and financial aid, and I'm so grateful. But you want to talk about a Richter scale shift. I mean, I went from getting early Christmas presents, and you remember when video games were $60 a pop for the N64, and PlayStation and Sega Genesis and Sega Dreamcast and Xbox and all this stuff, to literally we can't even afford these games anymore, so forget it, type of thing. And we always did what we could, so I don't want to make my childhood sound too bad here in that sense. But if you did grow up with a lot of wealth and you end up in a friendship or a relationship with someone who did not, you're gonna have different normals, and you're gonna have to be aware of that. And I'll give you one more story, Kev, too. I didn't plan on this, but this is important. My sister was older than I am, and if you're a long-term listener to this show, you might have heard this before, but she was 3 years older than me, and she hung out with older people. And so we had a really nice house it was a log home on a lake, and we had bonfires all the time, and my sister was older than me, and then she hung out with older people, and so she would have these parties at our house. And so when I was 14, I was hanging out with people in their early 20s, and they were drinking. And so I was around a lot of partying from a very young age. And so when I went to college, Kev, I went to a tech school. So these are the quote-unquote nerds of the world. Worcester Polytechnic Institute is an engineering school, and it's for very, very mathematically and scientifically sound individuals. And so the quote-unquote nerdy school, right, is what it's known as, kind of like a mini MIT. And so when I got there, partying was something that I was very used to. It was normal for me. And so some of these kids at WPI, when I lived with them, this is the first time they've ever been exposed to any alcohol. And so some of them went pretty hefty off the rails because they didn't know how to drink responsibly. And I'm not saying that I always drank responsibly either, but I was definitely farther along on that journey. My Richter scale was very different in terms of, I had already had a lot of experiences with alcohol. And it was very obvious to me that some of these kids were brand new to any sort of partying. And in some ways, it was interesting to try to integrate those things because I had some friends that were in computer science and they had never seen alcohol in their life. And here I am in my dorm room ripping shots of UV blue. You remember UV blue, Kev?
Of course. I remember all the UVs.
Right. And in college, I did party and had a lot of fun. Some of these kids were like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, right? And even though for me it was fairly normal and for them it wasn't. And that caused a lot of problems in terms of like other people's parents. And, there's a lot of culture shock and people from different countries and people from different cultures and different backgrounds. And I love that because that's one of the best things about college, Kev, is you just get thrown on a campus with people from all over the world, all different backgrounds, all different cultures, all different ethnicities, all different countries. And you have to figure out a way to coexist well. And on top of that, a lot of these people are on their own for the first time, and there's not a ton of rules. I mean, there's definitely some, but so it can get really messy. And in that mess, I learned a lot and grew a lot, and fortunately stayed in school and focused on academics a bit too. But I think that's the point here is everyone came into college with a completely different Richter scale for partying, for intimacy, for, some of these kids, Kev, this is the first time they got to stay up past 10 p.m. And so they didn't have any structure. Yeah. I mean, some of them really did go off the rails. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I have a huge advantage and a jump start because none of this is really that new to me.
We had a mentor one time who probably had a net worth of what? I don't know. $6 million, $8 million. I don't know what it
13.
13.
Yeah.
And we were talking to him one day and he's like, "Oh, I'm broke. I am broke."
Yeah.
And we were like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I'm broke. I just don't have any money anymore." He's like, I'm not broke to the point where I'm flying coach. He's like, "I still fly first class." And it was like, but that's his Richter scale. His Richter scale is, well, my net worth is only $13 million now.
Yeah.
That is so much of where you feel you fit in today is based on a past version of you. And that's why I was thinking of naming this something else. I don't know how else to name this episode because we're kind of all over the place with the stories, but you're recognizing a huge lesson from your past. The lesson is your set point. Your set point for communication, your set point for violence, your set point for love, your set point for respect, your set point for money, work ethic, expectations. That's what we're talking about is your set point is going to change throughout life, and you just got to make sure that you're understanding just because it's, and really, really think about it. If you had it really hard, so say like a level 10 in anything, and it was just a challenge, and let's just say, because I want to make sure I'm respectful with the way I say this. Say you grew up with nothing. Like you grew up, okay, let's do this. We've had a guest on the podcast many times, a friend of ours. His name's Anthony Trucks. When it comes to growing up with very little, Anthony Trucks grew up in some of the most horrendous conditions you can imagine. Okay? Mm-hmm. His level 5 now doesn't mean he can't shoot for like a level 10. Just because it seems like, oh, my life is so much better than it's ever been, it doesn't mean that that's as good as it can get. That's the point I want to make in this episode is, and on the other end too, it's like, well, I used to drink a 12-pack a day. Now I only drink a 6-pack. So I was at a 10. Now I'm at a 5. Well, it doesn't mean you can't go 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 either. So it's just important to understand where you are ultimately compared to where you used to be. That's the point I'm trying to make.
And it's a never-ending climb. That's why it's next level you. There's always a next level. And Kev, to your point, I remember, those people who are like, well, I smoke cigarettes, but at least I don't do, hard drugs. And it's like, okay, well, just because you don't do hard drugs anymore doesn't mean cigarettes aren't still bad. And so it's all relative. Kev, have you ever seen the movie, I know I do this all the time. Kevin's like, unless it's a comedy, probably not. Deep Blue Sea?
Yeah, terrible shark movie.
Oh, yeah, terrible shark movie. There's this one scene in it that is really fascinating because this episode, Richter scale, might as well be everything is relative. And it's important to understand.
I don't think that episode title would do very well.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. And that's relative. Relative to what, right? No, I'm just joking. Okay. So there's this one scene where essentially what they're doing is making sharks smarter. Neuroscience. They're studying sharks to cure Alzheimer's. It's like a late 90s, early 2000s movies. And one of the scientists in it went to Stanford, which is an Ivy League school, I think, and for neuroscience or whatever, and studied Einstein and all that. And I think it's LL Cool J, his character, like ends up explaining the theory of relativity. He's like, yeah, you put your hands on the love of your life, an hour can feel like only a minute. Put your hand on a hot stove, a minute can feel like an hour. It's all relative. And the physicist or whatever scientist in the movie is like, I went to Stanford for 5 years to get my graduate degree, and I've never heard the theory of relativity explained better than that. And so again, in this episode, the Richter scale, you have to understand that everything is relative, and you have to be hyper conscious and aware of that so that you can coexist with other people who, and this is important for me as well, because Kevin and I run into this a lot, right? We talk deep all day, every day, 7 episodes a week, and coaching calls and thousands of coaching calls and studying neuroscience and chemistry on the side for fun and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes what seems really simple to us would never have seemed simple in the beginning. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that. And so everyone's Richter scale is different. And if you're giving level 8s on your Richter scale, and that's actually someone else's 12, it's going to put them in the anxiety zone. So you just got to be aware of that. And it's super important.
And I mean this very seriously. Don't watch that movie. It's terrible. It's not.
Yeah,
good.
it's awful.
It's not worth your time. The sharks are smart. They get smarter as they go, and it's like they do some wild stuff. If you like shark movies and dumb movies, it's a good one. But if you like movies that are good, it's not a good one.
You killed my bird.
LL Cool J. Yeah, he is. And also, real quick, one of the people who plays the main character, I don't know if it was the man that went to Stanford. Thomas Jane later played the Punisher in The Punisher, the movie.
Yep.
So just a little trivia. Next level nation. If you listen to us, there is a good chance that maybe at some point, if not now, you want to start a podcast because maybe we talk about podcasting and you say, you know what, that'd be something I'd love to do. If that is ever something you want, I am happy to hop on a completely free 30-minute call with you. I'm not going to sell you on anything. Whether you're asking, hey, how do I start this? I will walk you through the process, or we can just add value in terms of where you're going with your podcast. I will have the link in the show notes for this. Please, if you want a show, if you have a show, it's totally free, and I'm not going to try to sell you. And we get to meet our amazing listeners, so that is a win-win-win-win.
Wow, just swallowed wrong right there. To that point of meeting our listeners, I have a department within our business called Next Level Business Solutions. If you have always thought about wanting to start a business, I don't care how small. Some of my business owner clients are starting from scratch. Okay, I don't care if you're brand new, if you have a multi-million-dollar business like some of my other clients. I would love to jump on the phone and add value. To Kevin's point, I'm not going to sell you anything. If you ask me about my coaching, I will let you know the prices and the run rate and all that stuff, and how it all works logistically. But at the end of the day, we just want to meet our listeners. So if you are thinking about starting a business or already have one that you want to grow, please reach out. The link will also be in the show notes.
Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number, and I'm going to come up with this title on the fly because I haven't come up with it yet. Oh, I've just lied to you completely because it's last week's podcast, so it's okay. Tomorrow for episode number 1051, it is last week's live podcast, leaning into courage and vulnerability. I very much enjoyed that one, and then I ate Burger King after. #grateful, because for some reason, Burger King has been calling my name lately. No, we are not sponsored by them. No, we never will be, but it was good. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family.
Please reach out.